All right, now this is what everybody's been waiting for. We want to talk about marketing hype. We want to talk about the words that are being thrown out there. Okay, so just to name a few, there's our CBD's Nanotech, nanotechnology, or liposomal, or bioavailability. All these things get kind of thrown around, and I feel like the average consumer doesn't necessarily understand them, but it sounds fancy, so maybe we buy it. Let's get to the bottom of what's fact, what's fiction, what's the truth behind these marketing terminologies. Is there science behind it? Is the science too new? Like, let's get into this. I want to know about Nanno CBD specifically, because when I was doing my research early on, I talked to the head scientists over at our farms, and they said there's just not enough science out there yet. And because of that, we decided not to go into the nanotech side of CBD, because they cautioned us and said, the scientists that are making these products, or the chemists, whatever, they're not actually aware of how small they're making the molecule. If they're making the CBD molecule too small, it can cause some issues and maybe not be as effective. And then there's other people that say, well, it just increases the absorption rate. If you make it smaller, it enters the bloodstream faster, and therefore you feel it quicker. But then does it exit the body just as fast? So let's first talk about nanotechnology and CBD, because everything that I've searched on, studies and articles, I've only seen nanotechnology used in a pharmaceutical setting. I haven't found any science backing nano and CBD. So what is your take on it?
Well, Jenna, you explained it a lot more simply than I'm about to explain it. So
that's
you're
okay.
Dead on.
You.
Yeah. So basically, when we're talking about nano, we're talking about the size of the particle. Now, I want you to think about this. When you think of a glass of water and you drop a couple of drops of oil onto that water, each one forms a little small sphere. Now, if we measure that sphere, it's going to be a certain amount. Now, we make it tinier and tinier and tinier. You end up in micro, nano. But if you don't add something to that glass of water, all those globs are going to stick back together and form a big glob again. So the first aspect of nano is that there are some emulsifiers. And a lot of these nanotechs, to hold those, to maintain that small particle size, use things like polysorbates, polysorbate 80, polysorbate 20, polyethylene glycol, all the stuff that, well, it's not so great for the body. So you're using a lot of chemistry, and then they'll turn around and say, oh, well, it's natural. Well, not with polysorbate 80 or polyethylene glycol. Yeah, the added ingredients being emulsifiers and surfactants. So now the whole principle of it is the smaller size, smaller things tend to be absorbed easier across membranes, which our gastrointestinal tract is. There's also other aspects of it, and honestly, the CBD molecule is lipid soluble, so it diffuses quite well on its own. But by decreasing the particle size, the theory is that it's going to move easier across that. Now, all the other chemicals that you're adding, well, our body can recognize some of them as foreign, and a lot of these nanos are nanoliposomes, and we'll get to liposomes later, and the body can recognize it as foreign and actually remove it quicker. So in reality, you're applying a pharmaceutical technique without understanding how it's going to work for CBD, because even the pharmaceutical industry has recognized, and the science shows, that what works for one molecule doesn't always work for another.
So it's going to enter your body faster, but it's also going to exit your body just as fast, which means if I'm taking my CBD in the morning and the suggested serving size is morning and night, but I'm taking a nano CBD, it might not last me till my next serving.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, and we have to remember also everybody's physiology is slightly different. So you and I could take the same amount of CBD and have very different effects. And it's not just because I'm much larger than you, but it can also be just because of idiosyncrasies of my own gastrointestinal and absorption mechanisms.
Is that because
So
the body metabolizes?
mhm. We all have our own very unique metabolisms. So what may necessarily work for you may not work for me, or it may work better for me and work okay for you, or it may work great for me and not work for you at all. And it's all part of what makes us unique.
So serving size in theory, there is no serving size. It's basically whatever works for each person individually.
There are recommendations for starting, but yeah, you kind of have to figure your own way through it.
And that's true because, if I have people in my family and they take just a very, very small amount and they get great results just taking a few drops a day. Me, on the other hand, I take a whole bunch of it. And I don't know if that's because I've taken it for so long or my body is just already used to cannabis. What's your take on that? Is that because of the way my body metabolizes it versus theirs? Or did I build up some sort of resistancy, or I don't know the word for that, but.
Well, it's the scientific term for it is attenuation.
Okay.
It is often referred to as tolerance. So, I'm a prolific coffee drinker. I can drink 5-6 cups a day and not get the jitters. And in the afternoon, I would still need, another cup or two to get through the day. However, if I go and take a week off of coffee, I will have one and I will be bouncing off the walls of my office. So what has happened is because I've drank so much coffee for so long, that caffeine affects me less because the actual caffeine receptors in my body are turned down. The body actually kind of turns down the gain on that because you're taking so much in, you're getting so much signaling, and too much of anything's a bad thing. So the body's kind of protecting itself. So, but if you take it away for a while, or you don't take it as much, like your family who can 2 drops and they are good to go, that gain adjust, that their bodies haven't turned down the gain, or you're, back to the normal response. So it's just the body protecting itself from persistent signaling. Too much of anything is very much a bad thing, is basically what it goes down to. It's a fundamental principle of biology.
Are you saying I could take too much CBD?
I am saying that
somebody should tell Josh this, just for the record, because when we are sampling products, this man has no off switch. I'm just telling you, our house is filled with samples, and he doesn't. Too much is a bad thing ever. But
yeah, well, now what I'm saying, hold on, back to your question. There have been no toxicity shown, acute dosage toxicity. So can you take too much at one time? No. Would I recommend doing it? No. So, that's the best answer to that question.
Okay, sounds good. You guys got that? Someone says I get sleepy if I take too much. I get nauseous if I take too much. So I know that just under that is my therapeutic range. All right, so moving right along, we talked about Nannotech. Now let's talk about liposomal. What the heck does this even mean? And what are companies doing advertising this? What are we looking for when they're talking about liposomal and CBD?
Okay, so liposomal technology comes from, it was actually, the patent was filed at Duke University for it, and it was used to help deliver cancer drugs. And the principle of that is, if you put there's a principle called hydrophilic and hydrophobic. Hydrophilic means it likes water. Hydrophobic means it doesn't like water. Well, this particular drug that led to liposomal technology did not like water. CBD also does not like water. Then you surround it with these special molecules called phospholipids, and you trap it in these membranes. So you end up with these little tiny spheres, and that transition to nano, by the way, that can be absorbed and actually join the membrane of your cells in some cases. So they came up with this technology to deliver it. Now, one thing they noticed when they were first developing it is that our immune systems are really good at detecting these liposomes because they don't have specific markers on it where our bodies can identify it as being, hey, you're supposed to be here. So, and then there was another system that they had to avoid. So they started adding polyethylene glycol residues to it, and they got away from those systems, but then triggered an immune response, which caused them to be removed quicker. So, and they're having to do this with every drug. So one of the biggest issues with liposomal technologies that the pharmaceutical industries are having are a lack of quality control, a lack of stability in it, and just constantly having to tweak it to get the pharmacology that they're needing for, that they're looking for this particular drug. So if the pharmaceutical industry can't really do it well, I'm not sure there's the same resources in the CBD industry yet to be able to really figure that problem out as well.
So if this technology was created for a specific drug in pharmaceutical world, how the heck did it end up in CBD? What's the pitch? Allegedly, what is the claim? And you're saying there's no science behind it.
Yeah, well, one, there's no science behind it, but the CBD industry got very congested very quickly. So you've got companies out there that are searching for an edge to differentiate themselves. So they will come out and say, oh, we figured out how to put CBD in liposomes. And because it enhances the absorption of drug XYZ, substance ABC, it's going to work for CBD. But they don't have a study showing that it works for CBD or that they actually have a stable quality product. So that is kind of what they're doing. It's marketing. It's for them to stand out in a crowd.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that I've said all along. It's good to know that that's exactly what you're saying. And just so you guys know, we've never had this conversation before. So I didn't have to call in and coach Dr. James on anything because he's the science guy, right? So it is interesting that what we've been telling you guys, right, has been pretty consistent to the actual science. Because when we learn it straight from the chemists and the scientists themselves. And Dr. James is saying the same thing. So it's very, very interesting to know that what you're saying has been backing everything that we've been saying all along. So now that we've talked about liposomal and liposomes, and in case you guys didn't get that, I'm going to try to say it in layman's terms. Basically, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but the liposomes our liposomal technology was created for the pharmaceutical industry to carry drugs through the system. It wasn't working very well, so they added other ingredients or emulsifiers. Is that right? Or is that used in a different way?
Yeah.
To kind of to get into the body better. And so because CBD industry got busy very fast, companies were desperate to differentiate themselves from other companies. So they thought they'd try this technology or even just marketing without the technology, which is probably more accurate, to make their products seem superior when in fact there's no science backing it whatsoever.
Good.
So there you guys got that information. So let's talk about bioavailability. I've seen the demonstrations. There's a company out there that actually used our products in their demonstration where they take a bottle of our oil, like so, and they dump it in water, right? And all the oil floats to the top, and their oil, oil that they put into their water just mixes very nicely. So what does this mean? Their pitch is that the human body is made up of water. So that's the reason why you need to have these technologies in the CBD, because they need to, the oil and water need to mix in order for it to be effective. What is your take on that? Is this pseudoscience? Is this marketing? Or what's the truth?
All of the above. I think the only thing that got right is the statement that oil and water don't mix. That was proven very well when they dumped our oil into water, and our oil did exactly what it was supposed to do. Their idea is that they have performed something complex to the CBD, which is CBD is not water soluble, but it can be miscible in water, and it's a very technical chemistry term, but it means it's the effectively making a vinaigrette salad dressing. You can get the vinegar and oil to mix for a little bit, so that would be miscible. Then you can add emulsifiers to that, and so we have emulsifiers in our bath bombs and other products that help, when we need water to carry the oil to the body to be absorbed. Now, what they've done is they've used some sort of emulsifier or some sort of chemical complex, complexing it to another chemical. I think this technology comes from curcumin. A company has made a water-soluble curcumin, that's the active ingredient in turmeric, and hid it behind a proprietary formulation and basically claiming that it dissolves in water, which is technically not true. So now you have your CBD floating around in a complex of something or some kind of chemical mixture. And it's now moving around more freely in water. That's great. But the interesting thing about it is that our bodies are really tuned to digest and absorb two things very well: carbohydrates and fats. Why do you think everybody likes French fries, cheeseburgers, and whatnot? So you've now taken a molecule that would normally be absorbed by our natural process for absorbing fats and proceed to force it through an absorption pathway that is for water-soluble things. And the irony of this is that the fat absorption pathway bypasses the liver and first pass liver processing, whereas their water-soluble CBD goes right to the liver, where it can be chemically modified and inactivated as part of the liver's normal processing of everything we bring into our bodies. Then they say, oh, well, it moves around in the bloodstream better. Well, our bodies, funny enough, we make these proteins that will bind and carry fats around to where it's needed. Again, a solution for something that's not a problem. And then then you say, okay, some of the places we want CBD to go is in the brain. So there's the blood-brain barrier there. The blood-brain barrier is water impermeable. So now you have a substance that would normally diffuse across the blood-brain barrier because it's lipid soluble, but you've now made it water soluble, so it can't get across the brain. So you've really created a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. But hey, it makes for really pretty yellow colored water.
So you're saying that by making CBD water soluble, essentially taking the oil out of the CBD, you're making it ineffective.
Again, the science isn't there to say that either, but you're forcing it through a physiology that is not what normally would happen. So really now everything that we understand about the way it works in the body and the way it's moved through the body and acts on the body, you've now changed everything about it. So you're going to have some unintended consequences. So, it's hard to say because no one's really looked at it. The companies that are marketing this water soluble stuff, they don't even have data supporting it. So really it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist to make a pretty product.
It's just an unnatural process when
exactly.
It works very effectively in its natural form.
Yeah, because you've got it in there with a hemp oil, which has plenty of omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids, a nice polyunsaturated fat content. It's enough to carry it across. Yeah, is it 100% bioavailable. No, it's not. The only way to do that would be injecting pure CBD. So this is, we just don't have the science to justify the changes that are being made to this molecule to make for product differentiation and try to carve yourself out your own niche in the market.